The smell of lemon polish hung thick in the air as the morning light poured through the glass walls of Harrington Company, a financial firm that wore its luxury like armor. Men in pressed suits moved with purpose. Women clicked across the marble floors in heels that announced authority. In the middle of it all, Grace Holden pushed a mop bucket quiet, unnoticed, and to them unimportant. Her uniform was faded, her sneakers frayed, her hair tucked neatly under a navy cap. She moved carefully, as if the ground beneath her had stories she didn't want to disturb. At the reception desk, Tara Moore watched her with narrowed eyes. A perfect smile stretched thin across her red lipstick. "Be careful with that, Grace," she said loudly enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. "This isn't some public restroom. Try not to leave streaks. We have important guests today." The words floated through the air like poisoned perfume. A few coworkers snickered. One of them, a junior analyst, whispered something that made the others laugh harder. Grace paused, straightened, and for a brief moment looked up, her eyes calm, steady, and unreadable. Then she dipped her mop again, letting the rhythm of work drown the sting in her chest. Tara leaned back in her chair, smirking. You'd think she'd at least smile. Cleaning's not that bad, right? People like her should be grateful they have jobs. The words hit the room like a slap, but no one challenged her. They just laughed softly and turned away. Grace's hand tightened around the mop handle. She said nothing. Silence had become her shield long ago. Near the elevators, Jason Kerr, the assistant manager, was sipping coffee and scrolling his phone. "Tara," he called out, "make sure she stays out of the boardroom wing. We don't need the smell of bleach scaring off investors." He didn't even glance at Grace, just smirked into his reflection on the polished chrome doors. "Of course," Tara replied sweetly. "Wouldn't want the help ruining the view." Grace's bucket wheels squeaked as she moved down the hall, the sound oddly human in the sterile air. Every corner of this place seemed built to remind her she didn't belong. But as she passed the glass-walled conference room, her gaze caught the faint reflection of her own face, and for a moment, she almost smiled. They didn't know who she really was. She reached the break room. Inside, laughter erupted as she entered. Jason sat at the counter with two others, their suits sharp, their arrogance sharper. "Morning, Grace," he said mockingly. "Did you miss a spot yesterday? Or is that your style of interior design?" The group laughed, and Grace simply walked to the counter to replace the trash liner. Jason nudged one of his colleagues. "You know, my wife asked why companies even hire janitors now. AI could do half this work. But then again," his eyes flicked toward Grace Dash, "a robot wouldn't smile when you order it around." Tara, entering with a folder, chimed in. "Smile? She barely speaks English properly." Grace stopped, her hand frozen midair, the trash bag half folded. Her voice, when it came, was low but clear. "I speak just fine, Ms. Moore. I just prefer listening." The room fell silent for a heartbeat. Then Jason chuckled. "Ooh, a sharp tongue. Maybe that's why your kind never lasts long here." Grace's eyes met his. Not angry, not pleading, just knowing. "My kind," she said softly. "You mean people who work harder than you think?" Jason grinned. "No, I mean people who think hard work erases what they are." The laugh that followed felt colder than air conditioning. Grace picked up her mop, turned, and left. The sound of her steps down the corridor was slow, deliberate, echoing faintly against the marble. She reached a corner hallway where few employees ever went. The lights flickered slightly, humming. From her pocket, she took out an old phone with a cracked screen and opened the Notes app. Her thumb moved with quiet precision as she typed. Phase 1 complete. Patterns confirmed. Verbal abuse, racial bias, intimidation. Continue observation. She saved the note, locked the phone, and slipped it back into her pocket. A few moments later, Aaron Webb, the night security officer, approached from the other end of the hall. He was in his mid-40s, weary-eyed but kind. "You all right, Grace?" he asked softly. "Heard them mouthing off again." Grace shrugged. "I'm fine. You get used to people showing you who they are." Aaron hesitated. "They shouldn't treat you that way. If you ever need me to report something, Dash." "Not yet," Grace interrupted gently. "Some lessons, Aaron, people have to teach themselves. I just give them time. Her voice carried a calm that unnerved him, a quiet certainty that seemed out of place in someone with a mop and bucket. As she turned back toward the main hall, Tara's laughter echoed faintly from the reception. She's probably here on some diversity quota. They always make us look bad. Jason's voice followed, smug and careless. Doesn't matter. People like her never rise far. She's lucky we let her through the front door. Grace didn't stop walking. She didn't respond. But her reflection in the glass door shifted slightly, the faintest flicker of a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Outside, the city roared to life. Inside, the office buzzed with polite cruelty. Grace finished her shift, collected her tools, and walked past the front desk where Tara was scrolling her phone. Make sure you clock out this time, Grace, Tara said without looking up. We don't pay for extra minutes. Grace paused just long enough to meet her gaze. Don't worry, Ms. Moore, she said, voice smooth as silk. Time has a way of paying people back. Then she left her cart rolling across the marble one last time, leaving a spotless trail behind her. What no one noticed was the small camera clipped beneath the handle, silently recording everything that had just happened. The lobby returned to laughter. The racists went back to their comfort. And somewhere between the click of Tara's heels and the hush of Grace's mop water, the story had already begun to turn. The next morning began the same way, sunlight cutting across the glass lobby, the scent of fresh coffee masking the stale arrogance that hung in the air. Grace arrived quietly, her uniform freshly pressed, her face unreadable. She nodded politely to the guard on duty, then wheeled her cart toward the elevators. As the doors slid open, laughter drifted down the hall. Tara was already there, leaning against the front desk, gossiping about the charity gala the company was hosting that weekend. I swear, Tara said loudly, they'll let anyone in that event just to look diverse. Last year they even hired a black catering company. Half the servers didn't know how to set a table. Jason laughed as if it were the cleverest thing he'd ever heard. Grace froze for a second, her hand resting on the mop handle, and then moved on without a word. She began her work near the conference rooms, where the carpet swallowed sound and voices carried power. Through the frosted glass she could see Helena Grant, the regional director, meeting with executives. Grace watched her for a moment, tall, poised, every word measured. Helena had built her career on merit, but Grace knew even she had faced the unspoken walls of discrimination. The sight gave Grace a flicker of quiet strength. She returned to her work, humming softly under her breath. An hour later, Jason appeared behind her. Hey, Grace, he said, leaning on the doorframe. I need you to clean the break room again. Someone spilled milk. And do it fast. Real employees have to eat there. The word real dripped with contempt. Grace turned, nodded once, and walked past him. His smirk followed her like a shadow. Inside the break room, the spill was intentional, milk poured across the counter, breadcrumbs crushed into the floor. She sighed, kneeling down to clean it. As she wiped the tiles, the door swung open and Tara stepped in, pretending surprise. Oh, you're still here? I thought maybe you'd quit after yesterday. She walked closer, her perfume heavy, her tone sharp. Look, I get it. You're trying to earn your keep. But honestly, this isn't the kind of place for... Well, you know. Grace looked up slowly, her voice quiet but steady. No, I don't. What kind of place is this? Tara's painted smile wavered. You know what I mean. You just don't fit the image of Harrington Company. Clients expect professionalism. Grace's gaze didn't move. Professionalism isn't about how someone looks, Ms. Moore. It's about how they treat people. For the first time, Tara didn't have a ready reply. She brushed past Grace with a muttered, just finish up. But her cheeks flushed. The small audience in the hall who'd overheard whispered to each other, the laughter that usually followed Tara's cruelty fading into an uneasy quiet. By lunch, Grace had retreated to the supply room, a small, dimly lit space that smelled of bleach and old paperwork. She sat on a crate and checked her phone. A new message blinked on the screen, Phase 2 scheduled for Friday. Confirm presence. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Confirmed, she typed, then locked the phone. A knock startled her. It was Aaron Webb, the night guard again, holding 2 coffees. Thought you could use this, he said. Heard they've been on you worse today. She took the cup with a grateful nod. Thank you, she said softly. You ever notice how some people mistake cruelty for confidence? Aaron smiled sadly. Every day. But I also notice the quiet ones usually win in the end. She met his eyes for a moment, then stood, her resolve settling like steel beneath calm water. Later that afternoon, Helena Grant crossed paths with Grace in the hallway. You're Holden, right? She asked kindly. You've been with us a few months now? Grace nodded. Yes, ma'am. Helena's tone softened. I've heard good things from maintenance. Keep up the work. This building runs on people like you, though some forget that. Grace felt warmth rise in her chest, a rare kindness she hadn't expected. Thank you, Ms. Grant, she replied. I appreciate that more than you know. When Helena walked away, Jason appeared from behind the pillar, rolling his eyes. Don't let that go to your head. Helena's just being polite. She doesn't actually care. His voice dropped to a whisper. You're just the help, Grace. Don't start thinking you're one of us. Something in Grace's expression shifted. Not anger, just a quiet realization. She set the mop aside and faced him fully. No, Mr. Kerr. I'm not one of you. She let the words hang there, cold and heavy, before walking away. Jason's grin faltered. That evening, when most of the office emptied out, Grace moved through the silent halls with her cart. She stopped by the lobby, looking at the company's framed photos on the wall, smiling faces of executives, plaques for community awards, and at the bottom, a small brass engraving, founded on integrity and respect. She traced the letters lightly with her fingertips. The irony stung, but beneath it pulsed something stronger: determination. From the far end of the hall, Tara's laughter drifted again as she left for the night, arm in arm with Jason. Their words carried easily. Imagine her thinking she belongs here, Jason said. Some people just don't know their place. Tara laughed high and sharp. It's not her fault. They're all the same. Try too hard, never get far. Grace stood in the dim light, their laughter fading behind her. For a long moment she stared at her reflection in the window, tired, silent, invisible. Then she whispered to herself, they'll know my place soon enough. She wheeled her cart away, leaving behind a spotless floor that gleamed under the night lights, clean, cold, and waiting for truth. By Friday morning, the office shimmered with artificial excitement. The charity gala was hours away, and everyone buzzed about their dresses, suits, and who might appear in the newspaper society section. Banners fluttered, glasses clinked in preparation, and for once, even the marble floors gleamed brighter than usual because Grace had made them that way. No one thanked her. They simply stepped over her bucket as though it were furniture. She was invisible again, and that suited her purpose. But inside, something in her had begun to tighten, coil, and wait. Tara strutted into the lobby in a red designer gown, holding a clipboard like a crown. Make sure no one touches the main display, she barked. And Grace, don't hover near the guests. They'll think we hired you to make the company look charitable. Her voice carried enough venom to stain the air. Jason stood by the door, hair slicked back, grinning at her cruelty. Yeah, Grace, do us a favor, clean the side hallway where no one has to see you. You'll ruin the photos. Grace dipped her head slightly. Yes, sir. The words came out even, steady, almost respectful. But the look in her eyes had changed, hard, precise, as if she were memorizing each insult. As the event began, laughter and champagne filled the hall. Guests in tuxedos and shimmering dresses mingled, oblivious to the quiet figure moving along the far wall with a mop and cloth. Grace wiped down the surfaces that no one else saw: the edges, the frames, the forgotten corners. It was what she did best, noticing what others ignored. At one point, Jason passed by with a group of investors. His voice boomed through the air, practiced and false. Here at Harrington Company, we value diversity. Everyone has their place here. He looked toward Grace with an icy smile. Some just have to work harder to find it. The investors chuckled politely, mistaking his malice for humor. Grace kept cleaning, each swipe of the cloth slower than the last. Moments later, she heard glass shatter. A server had dropped a tray of wine near the main display, deep red spilling across the pristine floor. Guests gasped. Tara's voice sliced through the noise. "Grace! Get over here now." The tone carried not urgency but contempt. Grace hurried forward with her supplies, kneeling beside the spill. The crowd parted slightly, some whispering, some smirking. Tara folded her arms. "Hurry up. You're embarrassing us." Grace's hands moved quickly, soaking up the wine, her knees pressing into the cold marble. Jason stepped forward, his voice dripping mockery. "Careful there. You missed a spot." He flicked a napkin onto the floor beside her, laughter following from his colleagues. "I guess some stains are just too deep, huh?" The words hit harder than the laughter. Grace paused, looked at the red streak staining her gloves, and then up at the people watching her kneel. For the first time her calm cracked not into anger but into sorrow. There was something deeply human, deeply painful in the way she inhaled and steadied herself. The humiliation was deliberate, meant to break her spirit before the crowd. But they didn't know that the crowd was exactly where she wanted to be. She rose slowly, standing straight, the mop handle still in her hand. Tara scoffed. "Where are you going? You're not finished." Grace turned, eyes steady, voice low but commanding. "I am." The music had stopped. Conversations died. Everyone stared at her. "Excuse me," Tara said, her tone brittle. "You're done when I say you're done." Grace set the mop aside. Her voice carried through the stunned hall. "You've made it very clear what you think of me. You've all laughed, mocked, and reminded me of where you think I belong. But there's something you should remember: people's positions can change faster than you think." Jason took a step forward, face flushed. "Is that a threat?" "No," she said quietly. "It's a reminder." A ripple of unease passed through the room. Someone murmured her name. Cameras from the event photographers turned instinctively toward the confrontation. Grace picked up her cleaning cart and began to walk toward the elevator. Tara followed, shouting after her, "If you walk out now, don't come back. You'll never work in this city again." Grace didn't answer. The elevator doors opened and she stepped inside, the polished steel closing behind her with a soft hiss. The guests turned back to their drinks, the staff whispered, and Tara shook her head, pretending indifference. But Jason muttered under his breath, "Who does she think she is?" In the quiet of the elevator, Grace leaned against the wall and exhaled slowly. Her reflection stared back at her tired eyes, steady hands, a face that had borne too much. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. One new message glowed across the screen. Phase 3 confirmed. Proceed at 9 a.m. Monday. She typed one word in reply, "Ready." That night, as the gala lights dimmed and the laughter faded, the building emptied out. Tara and Jason left arm in arm, drunk on wine and arrogance. Aaron Webb stayed behind, locking the doors. As he passed the elevator, he found Grace's badge resting neatly on the floor beside her mop and gloves. He frowned, picked it up and looked around. She was gone. Only the faint echo of her voice seemed to remain measured, composed, promising something inevitable. "Some stains don't fade," it whispered to memory. "They wait to be revealed." Monday morning arrived like a reckoning. The sun broke through a restless sky, slicing through the glass towers of the city, landing directly on the polished windows of Harrington Company. Inside, the air felt heavier than usual. Whispers traveled faster than the elevator. The story of the janitor who quit at the gala had spread through every department, twisted into gossip. Some said she'd stormed out in anger. Others said she'd been fired. Tara, seated at the reception desk with her usual poise, smirked whenever Grace's name was mentioned. She couldn't handle real work, she told anyone who'd listen. People like her never last long where standards matter. Jason echoed her laughter from the hallway, more confident than ever. But beneath the arrogance, there was a faint unease neither could name. At exactly 9, the glass doors to the lobby slid open with a soft chime. A pair of executives entered, 2 men in dark suits, badges clipped to their belts. Their expressions were sharp, official. Tara straightened instantly, flashing her professional smile. "Good morning, welcome to Harrington Company. How can I help you?" One of the men, tall and calm, spoke without returning her smile. "We're here for an internal audit. Please notify your department head." Tara blinked, thrown off balance. "An audit? On what grounds?" The man didn't answer, simply said, "We'll need full access to management offices and employee logs. Someone will brief you shortly." Moments later, Helena Grant walked in, her heels clicking briskly across the marble. She was composed, though her eyes carried a certain weight, as if she already knew what was coming. "Morning, everyone," she said. "Please gather in the conference room. There's a matter we need to address immediately." Jason exchanged a confused glance with Tara but obeyed, smoothing his tie as if that might restore his confidence. When the staff had assembled, the door opened once more. The woman who entered was almost unrecognizable, tailored navy suit, hair neatly pinned, shoulders square, chin lifted. But the eyes were the same. Grace Holden. The room fell into a silence so complete it seemed to swallow sound. Tara's jaw went slack. Jason's coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. Grace looked at them, her expression calm but unflinching. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice carrying across the table. "I trust everyone had a pleasant weekend." Tara stammered. What is this?" Helena spoke before Grace could. "Allow me to introduce Ms. Grace Holden, Head of Corporate Ethics and Compliance, currently leading the Equal Opportunity Division across all Harrington branches." The words landed like thunder. Jason's face drained of color. Tara's laugh came out brittle, desperate. "This is some kind of joke, right? She's a janitor." Grace's gaze met hers, cool and unwavering. "That's what you believed. That's what I needed you to believe." She laid a folder on the table. "For the past 6 weeks, I've been working undercover following multiple reports of racial bias and harassment within this branch. I wanted to see if the culture had truly changed. It hasn't." Jason's chair screeched against the floor as he stood. "You can't accuse us of that. We've done nothing wrong." Grace opened the folder, revealing photographs, transcripts, and security stills. Every word, every gesture, every humiliation was documented, she said quietly. "Your own cameras helped." Helena stepped forward. "Mr. Kerr, Ms. Moore, you will both be placed on immediate suspension pending investigation. The findings will also be submitted to the Equal Opportunity Commission and to our board for disciplinary review." Tara's voice cracked. "This is insane. You set us up." Grace shook her head. "No, Ms. Moore. I simply gave you the opportunity to show who you really are when you thought no one important was watching." She turned to the rest of the room, her voice softening but still strong. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came here because people like me and my mother were once told we didn't belong in places like this. She scrubbed these kinds of floors 40 years ago and was fired because a client didn't like her skin color. I promised myself I'd never let that happen again." The quiet that followed was almost reverent. Even those who had stayed silent during the mockery felt the sting of shame. Jason tried one last defense. "You could have just filed a report. Why this charade?" Grace's reply was measured, steady. "Because paperwork doesn't expose hearts. Behavior does. I wanted to see the truth, not the performance people give when they know they're being watched." Helena nodded solemnly, her respect visible. "Ms. Holden, thank you for what you've done. You've reminded us what integrity truly means." Security entered to escort Tara and Jason from the room. As they passed Grace, Tara hissed under her breath, "You'll regret this." Grace looked at her, expression unreadable. "Regret is a luxury you earn by doing what's right. You never tried." When the doors closed behind them, Grace turned back to the remaining staff. Her voice softened, almost weary. "Racism doesn't always wear a mask of hatred. Sometimes it smiles, laughs, and calls itself professionalism. But silence, the kind that lets it grow, that's what destroys good places." A few employees lowered their heads, unable to meet her gaze. Grace gathered her papers, her movements calm. She wasn't triumphant, only resolute. She had seen the worst of people, but also the flicker of change in a few faces. Maybe that was enough for now. As she stepped out into the hallway, Aaron Webb stood waiting near the door, his expression proud. Told you the quiet ones usually win, he said softly. Grace smiled faintly. Not win, Aaron, she replied. We just remind the world what losing looks like. She walked past him, her heels echoing across the same marble she'd once scrubbed. And with every step, the building seemed to breathe differently, as if the walls themselves had learned something. The following days carried a quiet stillness through Harrington Company, the kind that settles after a storm. The marble lobby, once full of laughter that cut like knives, now echoed with something heavier reflection. The staff moved differently, their conversations hushed, their eyes following Grace Holden whenever she passed. She didn't bask in attention, she avoided it. She was there to finish what she started. The company had ordered a full audit of its management practices, and several senior figures were under review. For Tara Moore and Jason Kerr, the world had shifted overnight. Their desks stood empty, their names removed from the system. Their arrogance had evaporated like steam from cold glass. Grace spent her mornings in Helena Grant's office, reviewing files, conducting meetings, and overseeing staff training. Yet even with her new title spoken aloud, some employees still hesitated when they saw her. She didn't blame them. Real change never comes with a single revelation, it grows in the quiet after. One afternoon, as Grace prepared a report, a soft knock interrupted her. It was Aaron Webb, hat in hand. They're talking about you, he said. Half of them say they feel guilty. The other half say they didn't know. Grace looked up from her papers, her voice calm. That's the problem, Aaron. Too many people think not knowing is an excuse. He nodded. Tara and Jason? Officially terminated, she replied. And facing formal complaints with the commission. I didn't want that to happen publicly, but actions have weight. Aaron hesitated before saying, You did what had to be done. You didn't humiliate them, they did that themselves. Grace offered a faint smile. Maybe. But sometimes I wish justice didn't have to hurt so much. Later that evening, she walked through the now empty office. The floors gleamed, but she no longer carried a mop. Her footsteps alone filled the quiet halls. In the lobby, she stopped by the engraved plaque founded on integrity and respect. Her reflection stared back from its bronze surface. Maybe now, she whispered, those words will mean something. Behind her, Helena's voice came gently. They will, because of you. Grace turned to see the director standing near the reception desk. I've seen many people try to change systems, Helena continued. But most lose heart halfway. You didn't. Grace shook her head slowly. I just did what should have been done long ago. Helena studied her a moment longer, then said, The board is implementing a new diversity and ethics initiative company-wide. We're naming it the Holden Project. It's built around what you uncovered, and your mother's story. Grace blinked, caught off guard. My mother. Helena nodded. Her name deserves to be remembered here. Not erased by what she endured. For the first time since the investigation began, Grace's composure faltered. She turned away slightly, swallowing the ache in her throat. She'd have liked that, she said softly. She always said people forget the ones who clean their floors, but never the ones who teach them what decency means. Helena placed a hand on her shoulder. Maybe this is how she's remembered now through you. When Helena left, Grace sat on the edge of the reception counter where she once stood invisible. The memory of that first morning replayed, the sneers, the laughter, the weight of the mop handle in her hand. Back then, the marble had felt cold beneath her shoes. Now it felt different, solid, earned. She thought of every person who had been dismissed, mocked, or overlooked because of skin color, accent, or background. The pain that had once burned now settled into something stronger. Purpose. The next day, the company gathered in the main hall for a staff meeting. Grace stood at the front beside Helena, facing rows of faces, some ashamed, some uncertain, many quietly hopeful. She didn't read from notes. She spoke plainly, each word careful and deliberate. I came here to test this company, not to punish it, she began. What I found was painful but necessary. Racism doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides in tone, in silence, in laughter that sounds harmless but cuts deep. Every one of you has the power to stop it the moment you see it. That's where change begins. Her eyes scanned the crowd and found Aaron near the back, nodding. I want you all to remember this, she continued, her voice steady. Dignity isn't a privilege. It's a right. You don't give it, you recognize it. The next time someone stands where I once stood, make sure they're seen. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for several seconds before the applause began, not loud or forced, but genuine, the sound of something shifting. Grace didn't smile. She simply bowed her head once and stepped back, her chest rising with the weight of all that had passed. That evening, she left the building as the sun dipped low over the city. The light hit the glass walls, turning them to gold. She paused outside, watching her reflection disappear into the glow. The streets were busy, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She walked down the steps slowly, the wind brushing against her face. Behind her, the lights of Harrington Company flickered to life, illuminating the plaque at the door. Integrity and respect. The words glimmered faintly, like a promise finally kept. As Grace crossed the street, Aaron called out to her from the doorway. You done saving the world for today? She laughed quietly. Just cleaning up what was already broken, she said. Then she looked back once more, eyes soft but certain. The hardest stains aren't on floors, Aaron. They're in hearts. But hearts can change. She walked away, the city swallowing her silhouette, leaving behind a place finally learning what it meant to be clean. Before you go, take a second to think, if you were standing in Grace Holden's shoes that day, would you have stayed silent? Or stood up no matter the cost? Tell me in the comments what you would have done. If this story moved you or made you believe that justice still matters, hit like, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe for more powerful stories that prove dignity is worth fighting for.